Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Collaboration Culture Podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Winborne. Before we get started, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I am so excited to have entered 2023. Well, good to go. How are you feeling this evening? How did you bring in the new year? I want to know. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. But Happy New Year. And how did you bring in this 2023 New Year? Are you excited about the opportunities before you? 2022 lasted like 5 years, right? It seemed like it lasted so long. But we made it, y'all. We are here. And I am excited to have our guest this evening. I'm excited, first of all, to be in 2023. Second of all, for the opportunities before me that are presented every day that I'm alive, every day that I wake up and am able to breathe. I'm excited to be an entrepreneur in a season where entrepreneurship is budding, but also I am excited to have a collaboration culture around me, a culture of collaboration, a tribe of people who consider one another in our business practices, in our everyday lives. We become friends as a result of that. And so I'm excited to see how that unfolds this year. Been having several conversations with collaborative partners through the years just about what that's going to look like. But tonight, I'm excited. This whole month, we're talking Let's Talk Wealth. This is our Let's Talk Wealth series. Tonight, I have a special guest. He is actually a person who I work closely with now. We've known each other for about 4 years, 5 years maybe. COVID makes it feel like so much longer, right? I think it's about 5 years. And so we're going to talk finance. We're going to talk wealth. We're going to give some tips and strategies. And so I would like for you to go ahead, take a moment and share with your network. Take a moment and share with your network. Let me take a moment and share with my network. I'm saying join us. So let me share with my network really quickly. And if you could please, if you know anyone that's looking to grow their business, grow their finances, their personal life, they're thinking about legacy, they're thinking about what they can create and design now in order to enhance their family, their business in the future. They're thinking about getting a home. They're thinking about college funding for their children. They're thinking about who's going to take care of me if something were to happen to me and I need long-term support. Who's going to take care of that? Will I be able to afford that? Will I be able to retire by 65, by 55, whatever age it is that they want to retire? Will I be able to recoup anything that I've lost over this last 2 to 3 years? I'm concerned about my finances, and I would love to speak with someone who can help me to restore, rebuild, reset. This is the month for you to tune in, and this is the night. So Tony Zhang, like I said, my business partner, we just recently officially connected, but we've been in communication for about 5 years. He is a financial specialist, and I want to have him to share with you all exactly what that is and what that means. But our focus is tonight to design your financial plan as opposed to having somebody else tell you what it is everything it is that you need to do. You can design that. So, how many people have ever heard of that? Designing your own financial plan. How many people have ever heard of transferring wealth from one generation to the next? How many people have ever heard of being your own bank or being able to use certain platforms in order to build wealth, to build savings? There's so many opportunities before us that just as a result of a lack of education and information, we do not have all the tools at our disposal. But tonight we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about integrity in financial advising. Good evening, Terrence. Good evening, Ruth. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and bring on Tony, and so that you all can meet him. Good evening, Tony. Welcome to the Collaboration Culture Podcast.
Hey, Kim. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So we both have our coffee, we have our tea. You guys that are in the audience, if you would like to grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, whatever it is that you would like to sit back and join us, as I said before, go ahead and share with somebody who you know is looking to do something different this year in relation to their finances, who you know you've seen them spending, right? You love them, you've seen them spending, you've seen them talk about they don't have this, they don't have that over and over again, but in their heart of hearts, they want to do more. And they just need somebody to help them out. They just need the information. So that's what we're going to be covering this evening. Tony, share with us just a little bit about how you got into the financial industry.
Sure. Yeah. It goes back to year 2000. Around year 2000, I come to this country as a IT professional. I was one of the lucky ones. Find a job, working my way up in the job, climbing the collaborator ladder, and then eventually get to a place where I can choose which project I want to be in, and I get a little bit flexible on hiring people who do I want to work with. And then when I got to some point that I need to design my own finance, like you just said, I was struggling not because I don't find information, just overwhelmed of information. And then the professional that I interact with, they're all trying to sell me something quick. So as engineer, I start looking for information and then debate with them. I start searching, Googling. Now I just start debating is researching using Google is the right platform, right?
Yeah.
With all the noises and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, I was lucky. I got introduced to one of my family members. Through my family member, I got introduced to somebody who was also engineer, but
Mm-hmm.
he was a few steps ahead of me. He got a transition herself as entrepreneur. So I become a apprentice at that time, saying, "Well, I don't know what I can get out from this, but there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing to lose." I was
Yeah.
open minded. I was trying to discover something I can take advantage of, and also I can take home to serve somebody around me. So I started part-time business back in 2014, and gradually transitioned myself from an IT architect, in my opinion, to a financial architect.
Yeah.
So long story short, I was able to not only figure out how to do this myself,
Mm-hmm.
I also figure out a way how do I package it into something can become more educational,
Mm-hmm.
less promotional.
Yeah. And I love that you say a financial architect.
Yep.
I love it. So guys, one of the reasons I love sitting and talking with Tony is because the way that he explains things and the words that he uses are I first of all, I love words. Like my background is English. So financial architecture. And so when I think of architecture, I think of plans. I think of strategy. I think of processes. I think of foundation. I think of the tools that are necessary in order to create that structure. But it starts with the plans. I remember the first time I owned my own salon and barbershop, and we had to get an architect to draw out the plans, and then they had to be approved, right? And then we had to get started with the process, and it wasn't overnight. And so I want to talk about that with you all tonight too. When it comes to that financial architecture and that plan, it may not be overnight, but
Right.
it's possible, right?
It is.
And when we have long-term vision,
Yep.
that makes a difference. So let's talk for a minute, Tony, about the planning and architecture process when it comes to designing a plan. When you run into people that feel like it should be an instant, overnight scenario,
Yep.
what are you explaining to them about the process?
I have a life story to share. So
Mm-hmm.
just the other day, I was happening to riding the Uber to my office, and there's a gentleman who ride in the car. He's also IT professional.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I told him what I do as my business, he asked me a question: where is this interest rate going to go?
Mm-hmm.
So a typical financial person will say, "Well, this is how the consensus going to be. This is how my prediction. This is how my firm's prediction." So my response to him was, "Why do you care?"
Mm.
And he was dumbfounded, and his reaction was, "Why shouldn't I be care?" I said, "Are you
Right.
retiring next year? Are you even retiring the next 10 years?" He says, "I'm
Mm-hmm.
not." So this is where the financial foundation talks about long-term planning, but the world around us, the news media, the internet, they all try to capture attention to something you don't really need to care about right now.
Mm.
So that's actually highlighting the fact that people don't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
If people have a plan through architect, actually I like to borrow your word, designer.
Mm-hmm.
So you design your financial to your own value system, your life philosophy, and then pieces start pieced together, and you have
Yeah.
a plan. When you
Mm-hmm.
have a plan, whatever is happening this year, next year, really doesn't matter to you because
Mm-hmm.
your plan is 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
That's also bring a unique set of challenge because it's so far away down the road, people start to discounting its effectiveness.
Yeah.
If you're holding two bills on your hand, one hand says $100 in 10 years, the other says $10 next year.
Mm-hmm.
Most people grab the $10
Mm-hmm.
because 10 years so far away. So because of that, to me, is an education effort needs to take place,
Yeah.
which unfortunately our education system, American education system, our home, it doesn't provide necessary wisdom on how money reacting to our behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I get into the behavior finance, which is an organization I highly respect. It's called Think to Perform.
Okay.
This organization has scientists, has practitioners, consultant. They're working with uh, hospitals. They're working with nonprofit organizations, students, schools, and people like us to help us understand how people perceive money matters
Mm-hmm.
in their mind based on their value system, based on their life principles, and based on their strategies. And then we come into play, plug in those services and products. So the foundation really has to start from the bottom up. But industry has been somehow getting to a way that while we're getting to find you the best product, the cheapest product, the product has most growth potential, everything's talk about the number. The number doesn't mean anything until we put a meaning to it, right?
Yeah.
This is why I think we really have to sit down to design it yourself with the help with a professional, but not by the professional, in my opinion.
Yes, with the help of the professional. But to your point, and I'm sure you've run into this. I know I have. If you've never been taught how to do something,
Yep.
sometimes sitting down to design it, it
Yep.
makes it, more difficult. And so that is why I've been in this situation before in other
Yep.
spaces and even in finance.
Yep.
You just sort of lean on the expert
Right.
because you don't have the education and knowledge, and you just trust that
Yep.
they are going to guide you the correct way. Now, when you run into people in your career that have run into that situation, and then you realize that the agent or the insurance person or just whoever, the
Hmm.
financial designer, didn't put them in a design but just put them in a product.
Right.
What does that How does that make you feel, and how has that fueled your passion?
Right. So this is something I see that a lot. Even people already have a plan. They come to me for a second opinion.
Mhm.
I after I gave them enough information, it was saying, why this guy put me into this kind of plan? Why he actually asked me to pay this much to buy something I don't really need, right? So sometimes I feel angry about how the market has to be, the industry has been shaped around that, because
Mhm.
one way the financial industry has a lot of money, has a lot of opportunity, because people are undereducated. So it's like when people are sick, they're struggling to find the medicine. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
the side effect, right? It doesn't matter how
Yeah.
expensive it is, because when you're that sick, you're just trying to get help.
Trying to get well. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So to some extent, the industry has taken advantage of people who are looking for a plan or solution desperately.
Mhm.
So what I think, our share the same passion. Why don't we educate the people up front? Sometimes we can prevent that emergency from happening, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes when it happened, they're more prepared
Yeah.
than desperately needing help.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a mindset shifting in the industry. More and more advisors, more and more professionals starting adopting the educator mentality
Mhm.
instead of salesmanship mentality.
Yeah. The educator mentality instead of the salesmanship mentality. I think that is so key. And I want to take a step back for a moment and share a little bit too about Apex learning.
Yeah.
But before we go too deep into that, let's talk about finance. Like when you think of the word finance, Tony, if
Hmm.
somebody were to come to you and say, "What is it that you do?"
Right.
What is finance? Why is that significant? Why is what you do significant? What would you say to them before ever even telling them about your company or
Right.
anything? What would you say to them?
Right. So if in a conversation that I only have a few seconds to explain myself as a title, right, I would say I teach people to make a better financial decision,
Mhm.
right? And depends on what type of decision you're trying to make when we get into a deeper conversation on a subset of what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
But essentially, and very upfront, I want to tell them that not everybody born with the capacity to make a financial decision,
Mhm.
because we are equipped with a brain. The
Mhm.
brain, biologically, everybody is share the same brain, but everybody's experience are so different.
Mhm.
Think about your mom, baby boomers. Their market versus what we see is totally different.
Mhm.
That's why they become conservative. That's why they put the money in the bank and they trust in bank give them more interest rate. But it never happened today,
Yeah.
right? So we have to really think about the decision making process is a combination of your experience, your cognitive understanding, and also your professional knowledge, well, in terms
Mhm.
of financial knowledge. And that goes to cash flow management, to your point on debt management. That's a huge subject for a lot of people,
Mhm.
right? And then the compounding interest side of things. So our brain is not born to process compounding interest and those math problems, right?
Yeah.
So we think things are a linear way. We are so caught up on the habits we're doing every day. We buy stuff,
Mhm.
buy
Mhm.
coffee. It doesn't matter I'm affordable or not, and it constantly asking us to buy something, give us a little reward.
Mhm.
That's where the dopamine come into play with financial decision.
Mhm.
In a rational person or the person who think about using the prefrontal cortex, they will try to remove that from the equation, right? Because
Mhm.
when we sit down talk about designing our financial future, this is not something going to give me instant satisfaction, right?
Right.
And this is not something even going to give me a instant result.
Right.
So, but I like the one of the company recently come up with a tool. The
Mhm.
tool will take a picture of yourself using your phone,
Right.
and then immediately using artificial intelligence to tell you what you look like in 20 years.
Yes. Yeah.
So that will gives you incentive saying, wow, that's me in 20 years. Am I prepared for that? Should I plan
Mhm.
something for that? So unfortunately, a human being has to see those things to start have a feeling about it.
Mhm.
If you have a feeling about it, then most likely you're gonna have this reward system say, hey, I'm doing my long-term planning. Please give me a little bit dopamine, not for my short-term spending, but for my long-term planning as a reward.
Yeah.
That process
Yeah.
it doesn't come automatically. It has to be specifically trained. That's why
Yeah.
it's not a one session we can fix that uh, issue or train people to be better thinker in terms of planning, but
Mm-hmm.
that's why we have multiple sessions.
Yeah. And Tony, we were talking about this at the beginning about
Yep.
my book. And in my book, one of the things that we focus on in the very beginning is financial mindset and
Yep.
how towards the middle we go through exactly how we develop the financial mindset that we
That's right.
have.
Yep.
And then we talk through how to forgive ourselves of the stuff
Yep.
you can't change in order to move forward. And that's the problem. And I think that's the thing that happens. You try to move forward, you try to put your best foot forward,
Yep.
but those things that, like you said, your experiences and those things that you haven't been educated on, and you're trusting someone, and all of these different things happen. You see people making money fast, you see,
Yep.
all these different things occurring around you, and you're just trying to grasp a hold of how to get yours, because
Right.
everybody wants theirs, right?
Right. This is
Everybody Go ahead.
exactly. This is where the fear of missing out syndrome comes in,
Yeah.
right? So
FOMO.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I forgot about mentioning that even an educated person like myself, right?
Mhm.
If I get to an emotional fight with my wife, I wouldn't be using my trained uh, prefrontal cortex. I will
Mhm.
be doing something irrationally.
Mhm.
Sometimes I do shopping I regret as well.
Mhm.
So so the emotion get in the way of the brain,
Yeah.
and those your habit and those rewarding system also come into as interference of what you're trying to think for long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like your idea that accompany your book with a workbook,
Mhm.
because this is where you put a pen on the paper, gives you a sense of responsibility and accountability,
Mhm.
and you're
Yeah.
basically utilizing multiple sensory system to
Mhm.
stimulate your brain. This is something serious, and this is something, even though I haven't done it, but I run on a paper, I'm one step ahead of the previous me, right?
Yeah.
Which come back to your point, I already forgive, right?
Yeah.
And try to get your emotion out of the way, and then create an accountability system, and that's where you start getting to the right path.
Right, and that's a great point, because when you do get emotion out of the way, you do make the right mistake. So people, would say to someone, "Oh, you're so disciplined. You're so disciplined." Like people who can go to the gym every day. "Oh,
Yeah,
you're so disciplined." But it
yeah,
took intention and commitment for them to get to that place of discipline. They
absolutely.
had to put aside the emotion attached to it and make a choice and a decision.
Yep,
I want healthier goals. I want stronger muscles, whatever the goal is. And so
yep,
same thing with finances, we have to have discipline in and see the bigger picture in order to attach ourselves away from the emotional. Like, I know so many people that make mistakes because they spend emotionally. It
mhm,
makes them feel good, like you said, the
right,
dopamine.
yep,
And so they go out shopping, and then the
yep,
money that was supposed to go towards this savings or that or this goal, even vacations for their family,
yep,
it's gone, or that emergency that occurs. And so what I want to talk about, is some of those tools that people can use that they may not be aware of, that we are able to offer in as a financial designer, that they can begin to get some of the dopamine, right? So while
right,
we're working with them to overcome some of the habits and some of the emotional spending and all these different things, they can begin to see the future and see a bright future, while at the same time getting some gratification right now.
right,
And so I would like to talk about how that's possible through some of the options that we have, and even how some of the things that we had to wait years and years to be able to do, and to be able to build wealth, they now have tools
right,
that you don't have to have $5,000, or you don't have to have all this lump sum of money to be able to save and get a higher percentage than the bank is
right.
giving you on a savings account. So can we talk a little bit about some tools that are at our disposal today
Sure.
in the area of finance?
Yeah, I think first of all, your book is a wonderful tool to start with, right?
Thank you.
You have a workbook, and you use it as a journal, use it as a way that gives you a reminder. How do you start forming a habit? I remember it's a 30 days workbook, right?
It
And
is.
you can never underestimate how how much difference it makes after 30 days,
Yeah.
right? Because by the end of the 30 days, not only you start forming a habit, but you start seeing something as a micro changes, and those changes compounding over time. So those are things I highly recommend journaling
Mhm.
every day. And then the the tool we mentioned that change your face to some 20 years older, those are things available on the app as well. Probably I need to find a name which is company developed that. I recently also noticed a company who did a tool with gamification to it, which
Mhm.
is they connect you to a saving account, which gives you tasks to accomplish. For example, maybe you start very small, saving $20 per week, something like that.
Yeah.
Once you finish your task, they give you $1, something like that. So basically, while you're playing a game, they give you monetary incentive so that you can keep playing the game, and hopefully that will create a healthy loop to start a saving habit.
Yeah.
So those are the things I would recommend. And then once you are in a better shape, let's say get out of the that situation, hopefully after certain time practicing your principle, and then start a saving habit, which you already have a emergency fund. And then
Mhm.
let's talk about, are you protecting your family from unexpected things, right? Do
Mhm.
you have a retirement account? Do you have a tax saving account? Do you have education account? So that's why the tools you're going to use to your most benefit, you have to start thinking about who is the person I can talk to, educated me enough to use some of the financial tools and IT tools. So the app would work to a certain extent to help you create a habit. But
Mhm.
eventually, you're going to need an investment vehicle. It could be a saving account. It could be Betterment, AI, which we also part of that.
Mhm.
It could be open a traditional IRA, allow you tax deduction at the end of the year. It could be something shared benefit of both. So the industry is really innovative, but for you to get understanding what the industry offers, you really have to understand what you need right now and who other people can help you navigate or help you identify those tools.
Absolutely. And you talked a bit about some of the investment options. I think a lot of times when people hear the word investing, they
Yep.
immediately think about like the stock market
Yep.
and spaces like that. So if we could break it down a little bit slower, like I want to really explain that
Mhm.
the things that he mentioned, like the Roth IRA,
Right.
we haven't talked about this, but we can talk a little bit about leverage planning or being your own bank and how
Mhm.
you're able to do that. And these are investment tools. Some people have never heard of things like an annuity.
Right.
Most people only know 401k. Some people have never even heard of some of this other
Yep.
stuff. So can we talk a bit slower about investing and how some of the things that you just mentioned can actually be beneficial, especially from a tax perspective?
Right. So um, this is something I also learned in the hard way myself.
Mhm.
When I was a business owner in IT, I paid very little attention to my tax situations. So I was lucky to make a lot of money, but I lose some money in the stock market. But that's a
Mm.
side story. But I really did a lousy job on planning my tax. And only after myself become a financial planner, I started to understand, wow, there's so much I can do as a business owner and as a short term, as a long term. So the thing you mentioned, Ross, is a great example that while people still qualifying,
Mhm.
then they should participate in when they're young. Because the longer something in my office is tricky, I have to keep moving my arm. So
Emotion.
yeah,
Time out.
action. So if you have a current year tax situation, you want to maximize the tax deduction,
Mhm.
then you would opt to a pre-tax planning, which sometimes called 401k, SEP RA, solo, those things, right? But if you
Mhm.
don't have a high tax problem, then Roth, in my opinion, would be the perfect choice.
Mhm.
But taxation, you mentioned annuity as well. And annuity is actually something called tax shelter
Yeah.
for capital gain. Um, what I would really want to mention something that when you starting choosing the financial vehicle, you want to think about, is your emotion getting in the way for compounding growing of your asset?
Mhm.
because people can be easily overestimating themselves, or
Mhm.
they can be easily over optimistic, right?
Mhm.
So, and then people trying to think about what's going to happen next year. I'm going to move my portfolio one way or the other. The conclusion I have learned in my behavior financial course is the biggest problem for investment gain is not a product, it's
Mhm.
not even the fee, it's actually financial behavior.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this is so important because you don't see that in short term. This year you may losing something, you may gain something, but in long term, you're losing roughly between 4 to 5% every year.
Mhm.
So that's why there's a nonprofit organization, Delbar is example. They're publishing this behavior financial impact to your portfolio on a yearly basis using
Mhm.
the real data from the market. So that's why I shifted my focus from portfolio design to behavior financial coach,
Mhm.
because I may be the 1%, maybe the 10% of the best financial advisor in the market, but I can hardly beat the index.
Yeah.
So that's a fact, right? I don't even
Mhm.
want to argue about it. But if you can coach people to be a better behavior, that's an easily gain of 2-3%,
Right.
very easily. So
You know,
finding, go ahead.
it makes a lot of sense, but it's hard to hear because of the fact, like, not for me, as you know, we've been talking about it, but it's hard to hear when you're struggling, right? When
Correct.
somebody is financially struggling and they're just looking for the answer right now
Yep.
and they're trying to come back up, especially you think about our time right now going after COVID and all
Yep.
the jobs that were lost and all of that. And so it's like, it's really a passion, I think, of both of us to be able to understand that yes, people have losses, people have lack, and
Mhm.
and meet people where they are, but to really have that conversation and show that yes, you have gone through this, but you can overcome. And so I love that you're talking about that long-term vision
Right.
because it's hard to sustain when you're emotional. And I love that we keep talking about that. But I
Mhm.
don't want to preach to, I don't want to preach to anyone because people are hungry for tips and
Mhm.
tools. But I do want to harp on the fact that delaying gratification and having long term vision is the best gift that
Right.
we can give ourselves when it comes to compounding our efforts, the power of compounding to restore those things that we may have potentially lost. And so, one of the things that you mentioned, you didn't use this term, Tony, but you hear people use the term be your own bank.
Right.
The first time I ever heard it, it was presented to me when I first started in the financial planning industry. It was termed leverage planning.
Right.
That's what it was. That's what it was termed. So, can we talk about being your own bank, because you did talk about the emergency fund
Right.
and growing and how compound interest works. So, how can some of the tools that we have before us to help somebody to see more of a growth factor than like the say of the bank or whatever to
Right.
become their own bank? Can you explain what that means to you?
Right. So I think I'm okay. I think I'm gonna start using this to be your own bank as a
Mm-hmm.
way to describe certain vehicles. But I hate to use the leverage term in terms of investment,
Yeah.
because in the market there are people leveraging the credit to do investment, which
Mm-hmm.
is exponentially increase their risk in the portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So for everyday people, I really recommend they don't go to that route until you want to become a professional, which
Mm-hmm.
you can do as well as a profession. But for most people, stay away from leveraging, but really gain control of your behavior. Now,
Mm-hmm.
owning your bank is a concept that I have the money set aside. I decide how to use it. I decide how to borrow against it. I decide how to replenish it. Right.
Yeah.
I have a paycheck deduction. I have a dollar cost average. It goes into investment market. I specifically design my pockets of money into different purpose. So you
Mm-hmm.
have long term retirement. You have education planning, and then you have your big purchasing design as a part of your goal as well. So
Yes.
there are quite a few tools available in the industry. Roth is one of them. Cash value insurance is one of them. They allows you to take the money out when you need it, but they also allow the flexible investment in the chosen strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have your own bank, then you don't have to using interest when you really need the money to borrow
Mhm.
against the real bank. So that's the concept really, that instead of having a passive, not earning any interest emergency fund sitting in the real bank, you can actually put into investment, but at the same time protect your principal from losing. Right? You choose your portfolio which is suitable for this purpose, and then you really increase your liquidity. Because I like the book Anti-Fragile, which talks a lot about how do you design your life, how do you design
Yeah.
your finance, because you can never predict when it's going to be the next black swan,
Mhm.
right? Because everybody knows it's going to happen. You just don't know when and where and by what form of shape.
Right.
But being owning your own bank, you then have that cushion that you're allowed to tap into it, but at the same time, the money compounding working for you while you don't touch it.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that I love about it is that if you take money from out of the bank, if you take money from out of the bank, first of all, you're not going to be growing that money anymore. But with leveraged, well, with the be your own bank concept,
Mhm.
you could take that money out
That's right.
and the amount still grows. And
That's right.
I love that because you will not find that in a regular
Yeah.
banking
This
institution, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So this is where um I don't know, is that intentionally designed to be that way, or it
Mhm.
has been the education system was lagging behind. There's so much innovation has happened in the past 20 years,
Yeah.
but and everyday people are so caught behind with the current job and
Yeah.
their everyday task. They never get a chance to learn anything what's happening in the industry and why it's happening and how can I benefit from it. Another
Yeah.
example is interest rate rising environment. When interest rate is rising, if you were an annuity customer, you'll be very happy
Mhm.
because every day they're announcing there's a new rate going on, you increase your payout rate and stuff like that. Because when you are part of the financial planning as end result, you have been planned, then part of your vehicle is going to take advantage of this interest rate rising environment.
Mhm.
Part of that may be lagging behind, but you don't need it right now. So that's why when you really have anti-fragile financial plan, there's no bad news.
Mhm.
That could be every news is good news,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Yeah, but, back to what you were saying, and this is a popular way of putting it, you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
like you just mentioned, the educational system here does not teach a lot of things. And so therefore, fear uh snatches us up and we don't move. And when you're afraid of something, you just stand still frozen and you don't move. But when it comes to the reason why education, financial literacy is so important is because it helps you to move and then have kinesis. Once you're moving, you can
Yep.
continue to flow and flow and flow and flow. And it doesn't mean that things won't happen that you don't like, but the more you learn, the more you get yourself educated, you can make wiser and wiser decisions. And to that, I want to talk about something, Tony, because a lot of people who are in finance, or because I'm in finance, I get questions all over the board. I'll tell people all day I don't do taxes. I do not try to answer too many questions around taxes unless it has to do with this. Other than that, I tell you to call my CPA or
Yep.
somebody in my network who can sit down with you and advise you concerning that. I know
Right.
enough to be able to consult low ball, but I don't want to put myself in a situation. So that's an example of something that people expect for me to know because I'm in finance. Another thing is investing. And there are so many things going on with cryptocurrency,
Oh yeah.
Bitcoin, all these different things. You hear people talking about gains, they're trading, all of that. So, can we talk a minute about I love how you explain how you view Bitcoin, how you view trading. We understand that risk assessment is important, you guys. You want to be sure that you have covered yourself in every capacity. When anybody reaches out to me and they say, should I this, should I that? My first questions are going to be, do you have a budget? Do you have savings? Do you have an emergency fund? Because if not, I don't want you to go down the path where your money is at risk. But let's talk a bit about Bitcoin, trading, and those things. And what if somebody comes to you with that question? What is your answer? Should I invest in Bitcoin? Should I dot dot dot?
Okay. So this is where I know I'm going to losing followers for this. But I'm really serious about this. I'm an early investor in Bitcoin back in 2013. Okay, when I started, this was like a few dollars per Bitcoin. I have, even because my IT background, I was bought a machine at my home,
Mm-hmm.
mining Bitcoin every day. I even mined a couple of coins already,
Mm-hmm.
and I sold it around I believe $600 or $800. I don't remember. The reason I got out of this is I haven't even regretted one bit about selling early, because I know that even with my financial education with behavior finance, I will still be incentivized to keep doing it
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody knows that there's not a single magic can sustain that growth rate forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants to get in, make a lot of money, and get out.
Right.
Who is the one that taking the baton, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so my recommendation is it could be a hobby for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're technology very savvy. You want to do those things yourself. Blockchain is a great technology. I can give you that, but any crypto built on making money quick, and then you're gonna sell it with a larger, you're selling more than what you bought. To me, it's gambling.
Mm-hmm.
So and very much follow what Charlie Monk has advised us, right? So you're looking for intrinsic value. It's just like when you behave like a person, you want to add value to other people. When we have this conversation, we want to add value to ourselves and also to our audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there, I mean, from time to time, going all the way back to a few hundred years ago, the tulip uh, boom in Netherlands, right?
Mm-hmm.
When there's no value generated but the price keep going higher, we know it's a bubble by
Mm-hmm.
definition.
Mm-hmm.
Even if somebody trading a meme stock, right, GameStop,
Mm-hmm.
that's a bubble by itself. So some people going to gain for sure. So is Las Vegas. So to me, if you want to really cultivate an investor's mindset, a business mindset, I would recommend you stay away from that, to see that as a money making opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
that not only benefits your wallet, it also benefits your brain.
Mm.
And think about that impact your next generation. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
want our next generation sitting at home making money on computer in pajamas, right? We want them to go out there, talk to real people, interact with people, adding value.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that's hard to hear for some people. And one of the things that I love though is that, the conversation that we're having is not to bully anybody, to chastise anyone or anything, but it's to say for the average American, an average human, average person that wants
Right.
to grow wealth, that wants to leave something for the next generation, you just need to have specific strategies, systems, commitment, and discipline financially, as well as the literacy, so that you can make wise choices and decisions. Through my career, one of the main questions I get when people find out that I have a history in credit repair is, that's the focus. Can you fix my credit? And I could try, talk with them about, long-term vision, this, that, and the other. Even I'll teach you how to fix your own credit and how to understand credit so you can stay on top of it. And it's more so like, well, I need to do this, so I need my credit fixed. And so that is one of the reasons why I developed the debt detox, Tony, the way that I did, because of the fact that it was hard for me to see so many people continue to struggle and come back to me every year over and over and over again with the same issue. And this was 6 7 years ago. And I was like, well, what can I do as a person in the financial arena to, yes, help you to focus on the things that you want to focus on? You want to get quick fast credit results, right? You want to get that house or whatever it
Yep.
is that you need, but how can you also create a foundation for you and your family that you can be proud of. The saying is, do you want to, throughout life, do you want to leave debt along the way, or dollars? Do you want to
Right.
leave bills splashing to and fro everywhere, or some benefits when it comes to your children? And I saw a post today where I think it was guy's name was Adam Grant. He was talking about
Oh
how
yeah, I
so
like him.
many Adam Grant, you know who that is? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Talking about,
I love him.
how a lot of times we focus on the last generation and wanting to, you know, uh do something great for our ancestors, and
Exactly.
that's wonderful.
Yep.
But what about the next generation, right? What about our children? What did you saw that? Did you see
Yeah,
that
I saw
comment?
that. I think that's a number 12 or something points, right? Be the
Yeah.
ancestor. Yep.
Yeah. What about the next generation? And so that's really the focus here. What can you do strategically now, systematically now, in your finances, in order to leave something for the community, the next generation, your own personal? If for those who just like, look, I'm not worried about I'm not worried about my kids because I don't have any. Well, what about what you do today that will make a difference in the other things that mean a lot to you? For
Yep.
instance, some people, like to give to organizations. If you want to give to yourself, you can even give to yourself even more if you
Yep.
begin to save now. So I am excited to be having this conversation, and you guys will probably see Tony again because we're in community together and we're working together, and I'm learning every day something new from him. And we just always going back and forth, but the behavioral finance piece is really, really, really big for me. And Tony, you mentioned a word earlier, asset. And
Hmm.
so before we end, I do want to break down asset versus liability, and how as humans, as
Hmm.
people, we can be assets and live an asset minded lifestyle, and or liability focused
Right.
people, and how once we make that transition, it makes a difference. Can we talk to that for a minute? Because I wish we had a little white, but remember we had that whiteboard session, and
Yep.
I was over there like, oh, this is so good.
Yep. Well,
So let's
yeah,
talk about that.
sure. Um, the capitalism, it's created this resilient environment for everybody to participate, right? There's entrepreneurs, there's job market, there's
Mm-hmm.
incentives, the investment opportunities, stock market, option, all created on top of that. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing is really getting ahead of everybody is I have to spend the money that I don't have to make myself happy. And that's where the liability comes in. So we borrow too much too early, including student loan, actually, part of
Mm-hmm.
that, um, so that becomes a standard way of living standard,
Yeah.
which is very unhealthy
Mm-hmm.
because you have a debt issue,
Mm-hmm.
and two, you don't proud of yourself carrying the debt, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
burden carried down to next generation over. And the moment you're starting saving money, then you pay high interest rate to pay off the debt. It becomes a vicious circle where, and you, by the way, while you were doing that, your appetite if you have a bigger house, a bigger car, still increasing
Yeah.
because you saw those advertisements every day. So the marketer, they're so good at it, make you believe that liability is something as a privilege because you have a good credit score, you can borrow. If you can borrow, why don't you maximize it? So that mentality is really hurting people in terms of asset accumulation
Mm-hmm.
because while you are carrying debt, your asset is creating less, and then you're paying higher interest rate, and
Yeah.
then you even further away from getting to be your retirement goal or your financial freedom goal.
Yeah.
It's really that the distinction has been not emphasized enough during the market because of the marketers, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're not responsible for your financial well-being. They're supposed to promote their product.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really for us to educate everybody that pay attention to your distinction between liability and asset. Try
Mm-hmm.
to take, try not to take any unnecessary liability,
Yeah.
right? Try as fast as you can start accumulating your asset,
Mm-hmm.
because if you keep it just a simple spreadsheet or just a piece of paper, right, in a place that you can see every day, write down this is your asset, this is liability, and that will remind you where you are now, and that will shape your behavior towards a better asset accumulation stage,
Yeah,
right?
that's good. That's good. As you know, it's 5:52, so I always try to stay under an hour, but I have to close out with talking about collaboration, corporate wealth groups and things like that. You know, groups that build wealth together. You hear people talk about financial groups, but
Mm,
then also how you are able to teach and train others to be able to do the same thing you did, leave a job where you're making really great money in order to now teach and coach others on how to be financially astute, and
mhm,
how that has helped you to also build wealth and be comfortable and even supersede, I think, your previous salary within a short amount of time, but intentionally. And when I say short amount of time, guys, I don't mean 6 months. I mean I mean it did take him, I think, at least about 3 years or something like that. You know the numbers better than I do, Tony. But I want to talk about that for a minute, because I do believe that we can build together,
right.
and we can support one another to our financial goals. So can we talk a bit about wealth groups and also what you have done in order to get to a place of security for your family and helping others?
Right. So, so part of the thing that I started a nonprofit organization, Apex Learn,
Mhm.
is I think to be entrepreneur that we have to have some prerequisite, right?
Mhm.
How is my personality, right? Do I understand myself? Do I understand my environment, my family members?
Mhm.
How is my financial literacy? And how is my cash flow? And then am I in a stage that I can venture a little bit into some area that I'm not familiar with, like entrepreneurship? So eventually, I truly believe that, and I like you to talk about replace your previous income. And I think it's not about how fast you get there, it's
Mhm.
how predictable you get there.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of places, pay attention to people who try to sell you something that there's a course, there's a program, you get into it, and you can make a certain amount of money. My question back to them always, if the money is that predictable to make, you would have made enough money without selling the tools already, right?
Mhm.
So that's why we offer the financial literacy training and the business development for free. We truly believe that if we add value before the person become entrepreneur, and eventually when they want to become one, we can really helping people together. One of the
Mhm.
things you mentioned, that if people not in a good stage and they have a lot of issue to solve, what is the quickest way for them to get rid of the bad habits or even get a better feeling about themselves?
Yeah.
I think the easiest approach, or I think the most effective way, is find another person you want to help
Mhm.
and start helping them immediately.
Mhm.
This is what I learned in my psychology study, where if somebody want to quit smoking, it's very hard to quit smoking. You can, this is probably the easiest thing you can do multiple times. But the key for that is you want to find another person which you care,
Mhm.
and you want them to quit smoking. So just by helping the other person quit smoking, that person may fail, but you will be succeed.
Yeah.
Much higher chance. So the same thing. If you want to become financially free, you try to find another person which you care about, bring them together as a coworker, as a collaboration partner, as a
Mhm.
accountability partner. So this is where I think you and I we can join force, create an environment where people can find that supporting system.
Mhm.
Because today it's so difficult to find something that is accountable, with value, with knowledge, with not too much of marketing hype, that really do something, changing their behavior into the better way.
Yeah.
So financial industry need a lot of people like you and me to be able to talk about the language we talk about, to be able to pay attention to other people's behavior, to be able to really um, kind of talk about the detail within the financial vehicles, so that they build confidence themselves. Because
Yeah.
eventually we don't want to let them with a complex machine which they don't know how
Mhm.
to operate, right? Eventually, if a matured investor or customer, in my opinion, they can become a perfect advisor as well. So that's
Yeah.
where you can start making difference in your environment, in your community, in your circle. and start adding value to other people. One, you
Yeah,
feel proud of yourself, and two, of course, you get compensated well.
absolutely. And you know, one of the things that I really love is collaboration. As you guys know, it's like everywhere. But
Hmm.
and the reason why is you gain so many tools from other people. So while I look to build others, I'm a service driven person. Like I love that. So that's what really spoke to me years ago when, you know, I was like, well, what is it that I can do in order to, because at that time I was a hairstylist and I
Hmm.
was looking to do something where I could create income that I didn't have to always show up to receive. So they call that trading time for money. Robert
Right.
Kiyosaki talks about that quite a bit. And so I wanted to do something different, and I always love the finance. And so for me, being able to help others really spoke to me, and that's why I dove in. But I'm bringing this up to say I can always learn more. I never tell anybody that I know everything. And I think the value of collaboration, the value of building wealth together and really having the conversations, guys, we need to have these conversations with each other too, in various communities. But the value of that is that I can gain something new and I can continue to grow. And so one of the reasons I partner with Tony in order to, because I met him at a networking event that I had years ago, as I stated, and have just stayed in communication all that time. But we just started working together. But we have been supporting one another all these years, even if it's just subtly an
Right.
encouraging word, subtly a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, how is your family? And that built a relationship. And so now he knows more about annuities and things like that than I do. I can grow from him. And so anyway, what about as groups? This is what I propose to those of you, especially who are entrepreneurs. But what and even who aren't, but just interested in growing your wealth, building your wealth, growing your knowledge financially. What about who do you know that you could do that together with so that you guys can be accountable to each other? Of course, you got
Right.
me, but that you can be accountable to each other to do something different for 2023. So, this is
Absolutely.
something that I'm pushing for 2023. How can we build wealth together in our communities, in our collaborations, in our business affiliate partnerships, and all of that? How can we build wealth together so that our families and our businesses and our community that we want to serve? Now, for those of you, if you just want to serve yourself, okay, that's cool. But I'm talking about those of us too who want to serve beyond our own boxes. How can we do that together? And this is a conversation that I want to continue to have. So I thank Tony for joining me this evening. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts, anything that comes to mind post podcast, please reach out to me. You can reach out to Tony at apexlearn.org. And if anybody would like to get together to review your financial plan that you have right now, or not, if you don't have a plan, but review what you have going on to create and design something so that you can look back over 2023 and go into the next year and be proud of where you're headed and get on track, get on focus. This is only the third day of the year. So we would love to get with you. Now, these shows, when we talk about finance, I'm definitely offering me at your disposal. Some of the other shows I'm always highlighting, some of the other podcasts I'm always highlighting others, but this particular one I want to highlight financial literacy this whole month, financial education, and I'm going to be bringing on those people who I feel I can gain wisdom from and you can gain wisdom from as well. Tony, any closing words or thoughts?
Yeah. Let's work together to build more wealth for everybody else.
Yeah, build more wealth. And let's work together. Okay, guys. Well, thank you all for joining me this evening for our Let's Talk Wealth, the first of the rest of the month of series. So we're gonna be busy this month, hopefully. Sitting with folks, we're setting up appointments to go through some financial plans. And then also, I hope to have new and more information to share with you each and every show. So thank you for joining this evening. We appreciate your feedback. Once again, we will be back next Tuesday with another guest, and I will be asking Tony to join me again at another day, another time. So thanks again, Tony, for joining this
Sure.
evening. All
Love
right,
to.
I will see you all very soon. Night.
All right.
This has been a Coffee and Collaborations Media production.